Long crack repair has always been the big, intimidating mountain in the world of glass repair, the thing that most techs avoid like the plague. But today, that changes. We're about to introduce a completely new way to tackle long cracks using the Procure XL that's faster, easier, and far more approachable than the old school methods that everyone dreads. With this updated process, long cracks go from, nope, not touching that, to, yeah, I think I've got this. Any tech can do it confidently, not just the veterans with 20 years of battle scars and experience. You'll repair long cracks in a fraction of the time with this technique, without a massive toolbox of tricks, and without some mythical level of finesse. And here's the real game changer. Mastering long crack repair opens doors. It's one of the fastest ways to set yourself apart from your competitors, expand your revenue opportunities, and just get your foot in the door with new accounts who are desperate for someone who can handle what everyone else turns down. When you can say yes instead of walking away, you become the obvious partner. Before we dive into the step-by-step process, let's quickly break down 3 types of long cracks you're going to run into. Knowing which one you're facing will shape your approach and your confidence. So the 3 types of long cracks are as follows. The first one we have an example of on the windshield behind me. A rock chip that then develops a long crack that often radiates out to the edge of the windshield. Could be at the top, could be at the bottom. These are probably the most common type of long crack. And what's beautiful about this technique is that we'll only need one zoom injector to do it. We won't have to do any drilling. And so if you're new to long crack repair, this is a great place to start. Now the second scenario is if you have a rock chip where the long crack then radiates out into the middle of the windshield somewhere, or up or down. In that case, we will need probably 2 injectors. We will have to drill a small hole to terminate the crack and then fill the crack using the same similar technique. Now the third type of long crack repair is probably the hardest, and that's those rare cases where you'll have a rock chip where you'll have 2 cracks radiating in opposite directions, in which you'll have to drill and pop each end, and you might need up to 3 injectors. So in this video, we're gonna focus on the first one. It's the easiest type to learn, it's the most common, and it's a perfect starting point if you've never tackled a long crack repair before. Now I'm gonna walk you through exactly how to repair a long crack repair like this using the Procure XL and the zoom injector in a simple, repeatable, and totally doable way. So if you've avoided these repairs in the past, this is your moment to rethink what's possible. All right, enough talk, let's jump in. All right, so let's show you how to repair this long crack. Now we measured this, it's about 9 inches from end all the way out to the edge of the glass here. If we use a little probe, we can open it up and see, you can see that crack radiates all the way from that impact point from this combination break all the way out to the edge. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to, if we see any moisture present in this at all, if you refer to our moisture evaporation video, you can use that same technique from the outside and do a little 2-inch section at a time, maybe run 3 or 4 cycles to evaporate any moisture. If there's no moisture, then we always wanna use a melamine or some 4/0 steel wool, and we're just gonna quickly run that over the long crack and the initial impact point to make sure there are no hydrophobics on the surface that would impede the adhesion of the resin. So just a few seconds like so, and that will remove those hydrophobics. So the next things we're gonna do is just basically clean out the impact point, just like we would on a regular rock chip repair. We don't need to drill it. We can do this repair with only 1 injector. Technically, we could do it with just the tripod, but I'm gonna use the extension because it'll make things a little bit easier. So we'll take some suction cup sealant, put a tiny bit on our suction cups, just a little bit so we have a little bit of lubrication. We're gonna mount this towards the end of the crack, and by using this extension, it creates less pressure right around the crack, so it makes things easier to operate. And then we're just gonna create that downward angle, so we're right over that impact point. Then we're gonna take our zoom injector and we're gonna load our resin. Now you might wonder, like, what resin should I use in the injector? My recommendation is that you use the onyx resin. It really does a great job of hiding the initial break, and it will flow really well into this first part of the long crack repair. So we're going to start with the onyx in the initial impact point, but then we're going to use a different resin out here in the actual crack area, which I'll explain to you shortly. So we're just going to create a little space for the onyx resin. We're going to put plenty of repair resin, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 drops. And the reason for that is that, of course, we have a long crack, we have more space to cover, so we want to make sure that we have enough resin for that. We're going to do the same technique like we would with a regular rock chip by bringing the resin up to touch the bottom of the seal. Line up our teeth just like we normally do. Make sure we're directly over that impact point. If we need to adjust slightly, we can. You can lift right here to create a little extra pressure if you want. Now, all we're going to do is just create a quick vacuum to try to get things flowing, and we're going to inject. See the seal swell out a little bit. That's great. We'll do that one more time. So just 2 quick vacuums and 2 quick injections to help fill that initial rock chip. Okay, and now we see the seal start to swell up. So now we know the resin is starting to fill in that initial impact point. Now we're going to take our film tabs and we're going to take either crack weld 1000 or 2000, and we're going to use that to fill this crack. And if you're just doing normal rock chip repair and long cracks, I would recommend the 1000 in most situations. If you're in a climate where you have really extreme temperature changes, the 2000 might be a good option. The 1000 is a little bit thinner, the 2000 is a little bit thicker. You can do the same technique with either one, but that's the recommendation. So today we're going to use the 1000. We're going to take our film tabs and we're going to pull out 5 or 6 of these out of our little stand here, or our little holder, and we're going to kind of measure those out and see roughly how many we need. So it looks like I need about 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe a little piece at the end. So we'll put 4 or 5 of those out. We'll have 1 pre-cut to have an extra little section. And then we're going to take our crack weld 1000 resin, and all we're going to do is we're going to lay a little bead of resin under each one of these film tabs. A generous amount there, just make sure we got plenty in there. And we're going to follow that crack. We're going to do that all the way down. If we get some resin drippage, that's totally fine, totally expected, totally normal. Try to make sure that your film tabs butt up cleanly up to one another, just like so, and that there's no gaps between them. If you drop the resin a little above the crack, it might make it a little bit easier. Try to make sure there's no air bubbles in the film tab and you got plenty of resin in each section. This one will probably put a little more resin in it. Okay, and then we'll go to the next section, which is right along the edge here. And we can run those film tabs all the way right up against the edge of the glass. Okay, now we're just simply going to take our multi-purpose drill. Now you can use the cork end or the felt end or the flat end, whichever one you prefer. Probably my favorite is the cork end. And what we're going to do is we're going to go on the inside of the glass and we're just going to focus first on our initial rock chip, massaging that area, putting a small amount of pressure. We're going to put it on 1 or 2. We don't want to go to 3 or 4 because we don't want to create heat, so 1 or 2. And we're going to come on the inside of the glass and we're going to start here with our rock chip and just massaging each little leg, just like we would with a regular rock chip, like we've shown in our quick start videos and our basic training videos. Putting a small amount of pressure, and that vibration is what's going to help that resin to fill into the whole little rock chip itself. Now, super simple, super easy. Now once that looks good, then we're going to start moving out to the crack. And we're going to do this progressively, starting from the middle of the actual rock chip and then working our way outward until we see it start to fill out. Okay, so the technique for doing this is really simple. We're just using the cork attachment. We can also use the felt attachment, and you're putting a little bit of pressure on the glass, just a small amount, and you're just sort of nudging the resin forward. So where you see gaps, you're coming behind the gap and you're pushing forward towards the gap, if that makes sense. So pushing from the inside, pushing the resin sort of as if you're trying to push a ball uphill. You're pushing the resin from behind into the empty spaces. And we'll just keep doing that until we see all of those spaces fill out. So this little section is almost filled. And then if I see another section, then I'll move to that next section. Okay, so our long crack repair, pretty easily filled. If you see any additional spots, you can use that cork or the felt end to put a little pressure from behind to fill them out the rest of the way. Now at this point, we're going to take our ProCure XL, we're gonna pop it off here and we're gonna turn it on. Now this is really where things get even more interesting. Not only did we fill this 8 to 9 inch crack without drilling and without multiple injectors and without all kinds of fancy techniques, now we're gonna be able to cure not just this 8 inch crack, but also the initial impact point at the same time. So we do that just by sliding this over the zoom injector, pushing those wide set suction cups down so they won't create unnecessary pressure on the long crack. And then we can single or double press. In this case, I'll do the double press because we do have a long crack repair. Our ProCure XL lights up. You can probably see a little bit of the reflectivity. We're 360 curing this area. So we'll back off a little bit of the pressure on the zoom there. And then we're also curing this entire crack all the way to the edge. And actually the curing area comes all the way out, even out to here. So if you've got a long crack that curves at all, like this one does, it does a really great job of covering the whole crack, regardless of what the shape is. So we'll just let this sit here until it's done, and then we'll move to the next step. All right, so let's remove our ProCure XL light, put it to the side here, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the zoom injector as well. And then we're just going to take a small film tab with our pit filler, put that back over that impact point area there. And then we're gonna do one more, this time just a single curing cycle to make sure that that pit fill area is filled. And then we'll scrape it and polish it. All right, let's take our ProCure XL off here, and then we'll remove our film tabs across the entire crack, including the impact point, like so. We'll scrape this one at a 90-degree angle. That's where the actual impact point was. And then we can scrape the rest of it at a different angle so we can remove that crack resin. And at this point you could use some glass cleaner too if you want to either clean the windshield or even make the scraping a little bit easier. You'll want to make sure you have a fresh razor blade when you do this, which will help to remove as much of that material as easily as possible. And then we'll clean it off with some glass cleaner and we will be good to go. So finally, we'll just do a little tiny bit of pit polish on just the impact point. We don't need to do the rest of the crack. And just like we normally would on the 1-speed or 2-speed, gently polish the impact point, finish that up, and that's all she wrote. That's our entire 8 to 9 inch crack, completely filled and completely cured in about 15 minutes, and with very simple techniques with one injector, without drilling, and we came out with a great result.